If you've made it this far, you may be looking for something deeper than superficial advice on how to live better. Maybe you're dealing with anxiety, depression, or simply feel like there's something more meaningful to discover in life. I want you to know that you're not alone on this journey, and more importantly, you've found an ancient path with surprisingly current answers. What you're about to discover isn't just abstract philosophical concepts. These are mental codes, true unlocks in your way of thinking that, when applied, have the power to profoundly transform your life experience. In this video, we'll unravel 50 Stoic principles that act as keys to unlocking a more serene, resilient, and fulfilled mind. Ancient Stoic philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius were not just theorists out of touch with reality. They faced exile, slavery, extreme power, and the same human emotions that we face today. The difference is that they developed mental tools to navigate life's storms without losing their rudder. This video isn't just for you to watch passively. It's an invitation to actively transform yourself. By the end of it, you won't just have intellectual knowledge, but practical tools for dealing with anxiety, difficult relationships, and the inevitable challenges that life throws at us. I promise that if you apply even a few of these lessons, your perspective on your problems will begin to change in ways you may not even think possible right now. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep receiving more videos like this, okay? Get ready to unlock limiting thought patterns and replace them with a mindset that has sustained people for centuries. Let's begin this journey together, unlocking one code at a time, toward a more conscious, balanced, and meaningful life. 1. Learn to distinguish between what you can and cannot control. Imagine being caught in a violent storm. You can't control the lightning, the wind, or the rain, but you can decide how to protect yourself, where to go, and most importantly, how to react emotionally to the situation. This is the essence of what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, perhaps the most powerful mental unlocking you can experience. The Stoics understood that much of our suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. When you truly understand that you only have control over your thoughts, judgments, and actions, not over external circumstances, the actions of others, or the outcome, something extraordinary happens. Anxiety begins to dissipate. This is not a lesson in passivity, but in efficiency. It is about directing all your energy where it can really make a difference, rather than wasting it on useless frustrations. Ask yourself regularly, is this within my control? If it is not, practice conscious detachment. 2. Practice negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, to reduce anxiety. It may seem counterintuitive, but one of the most liberating practices in Stoicism is to regularly imagine what could go wrong. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils. When you consciously visualize loss, failure, or hardship, something amazing happens. You demystify your fears and prepare yourself emotionally to face challenges. It's like a mental vaccine, a small dose of imagined adversity that strengthens your resilience to real adversity. Try spending a few minutes each day reflecting on the following questions. What if I lost my job? What if this relationship ended? What if this project failed? Not to feed anxiety, but to recognize that you have the inner resources to deal with these situations. The result will be a paradoxical reduction in anxiety and a deep gratitude for the present. 3. Observe your thoughts as an impartial spectator. Your thoughts are not you. This simple shift in perspective can unlock a whole new way of relating to your anxious mind. The Stoics practiced what we would now call a form of mindfulness, the ability to observe thoughts and emotions without completely identifying with them. When a disturbing thought arises, try naming it. I am having an anxious thought instead of I am anxious. This small shift creates a vital space between you and the thought, allowing you to respond consciously instead of reacting automatically. This practice is not about suppressing emotions, but about creating the freedom to choose how to process them. By observing your thoughts as a curious scientist rather than a critical judge, you develop what the Stoics deeply valued, the ability to respond rather than react. 4. Cultivate daily gratitude for the little moments. Think how ardently you once desired things you now possess. This reflection by Marcus Aurelius perfectly captures the Stoic practice of gratitude. The Stoics understood a profound truth: Nothing in life is guaranteed or permanent, everything is temporarily borrowed. This perspective radically transforms your experience. The breakfast you barely noticed today would have been an extraordinary luxury for billions of people throughout human history. The embrace of a loved one who went unnoticed is precisely what someone in mourning would give anything to have again. Practice identifying 3 small daily blessings that you might otherwise overlook. Don't just list them, but genuinely feel blessed to experience them. This simple exercise rewires your brain to detect the positive, even in challenging times. 5. Accept that discomfort is a natural part of growing up. No wind blows favorably to those who do not know where they are going, Seneca wrote. The discomfort you feel when facing new challenges is not a sign to retreat, it is an indicator of growth. The Stoics understood that virtue and inner strength only develop when we face resistance. What the self-help industry often fails to tell you is that genuine growth is inherently uncomfortable. The Stoics embraced this truth. When you reinterpret feelings of nervousness, struggle, and uncertainty as positive signs of personal expansion, your relationship to challenges transforms. Start by identifying an area of discomfort in your current life, a difficult conversation you're avoiding, a healthy habit you're resisting, a challenging skill you need to develop. Now, instead of running away from that feeling, recognize it as a necessary path to becoming the person you want to be. 6. Develop the courage to face adversity calmly. Courage, for the Stoics, was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act virtuously in spite of it. Epictetus, who lived as a slave before becoming a philosopher, taught that true freedom comes not from favorable external circumstances, but from the ability to maintain inner serenity in the face of any situation. This form of courage manifests itself not only in great moments of crisis, but in small, everyday choices, being honest when it would be more convenient to lie, maintaining composure when provoked, persevering when it would be easier to give up. Practice microdoses of courage daily. Start with small challenges, perhaps expressing an unpopular but honest opinion, setting a necessary boundary in a relationship, or simply enduring minor discomfort without complaint. Like a muscle, courage grows stronger with regular use, preparing you for moments that will require deeper reserves. 7. Practice intentional silence to clear your mind. In a world of constant noise and endless stimuli, silence has become a precious rarity. The Stoics valued regular periods of silence, not just the absence of external noise, but also mental stillness, as a necessary space for clarity and self-discovery. Seneca observed that much of the disturbance we feel comes from too much interaction with others. When we are constantly responding, reacting, and processing external communications, we lose touch with our own inner voice. Try practicing 10 minutes of absolute silence every day, no music, no screens, no books, just you and your thoughts. At first, it may feel intolerably uncomfortable, but stick with it. This quiet space will become a haven where original thoughts can emerge and where you can reconnect with your own wisdom. 8. Choose your emotional reactions consciously. People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they have of things. This insight from Epictetus contains one of the most powerful mental unlocks of Stoicism. Your emotions are not caused directly by external events, but by the judgments you make about those events. When your boss gives you criticism and you feel angry, it's not the criticism itself that causes your anger, but your judgment that the criticism is unfair, personal, or threatening. Change the judgment. This is an opportunity to improve, and the emotion changes. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but recognizing that you have more agency over them than you realize. When you feel a strong emotion arising, practice inserting a conscious pause. Ask, what judgment am I making right now? Is there another possible interpretation? This small space between stimulus and response is where your true freedom lies. 9. Live according to nature and its principles. When the Stoics spoke of living in accordance with nature, they weren't just suggesting more walks in the fresh air, although that certainly has value. They were referring to understanding and aligning with fundamental natural principles and with our own rational, social nature as human beings. Living against natural principles, such as denying our need for adequate sleep, meaningful human connection, or higher purpose, inevitably creates suffering. Similarly, acting against our rational and social nature, by being dishonest, cruel, or unjust, creates internal conflict. Notice areas of your life where you are swimming against the current of natural principles or your own authentic nature. Perhaps you are working in a job that is radically out of alignment with your values, maintaining toxic relationships, or neglecting basic physical needs. Alignment with nature is not a restriction on freedom, but the key to a life that flows with less resistance and more deep satisfaction. As we incorporate these fundamentals of Stoic mind control, we begin to see how our relationships and social interactions are profoundly affected. Our expectations of others, our friendships, and our relationship to life's circumstances change radically when we filter these experiences through a Stoic lens. Let's now explore how Stoicism completely transforms our social and relational lives. 10. Maintain realistic expectations about people and circumstances. One of the biggest sources of suffering in our social lives is the unrealistic expectations we project onto others. The Stoics understood that expecting perfection, from partners, friends, colleagues, or the world, is a guaranteed path to constant disappointment. As Epictetus advised, when you are going to meet someone, say to yourself, "I am going to meet a human being." Then if you find faults, you will not be surprised or disturbed, for you had considered that you would meet an imperfect human being. This is not a cynical view, but a realistic and compassionate one. Try to identify a recent situation where you felt deeply disappointed. Examine the implicit expectations you held. Were they really reasonable, given human nature and the circumstances? Adjusting expectations does not mean expecting the worst, but accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Paradoxically, this acceptance brings deep peace. 11. Cultivate friendships based on virtue, not utility. One of the most beautiful gifts we can offer another human being is our presence, Seneca once said. The Stoics carefully distinguished between relationships based on mere mutual benefit and those founded on virtue and character. In an age of networking and strategic connections, this distinction is more relevant than ever. True friendships, according to the Stoics, are based on appreciation for each other's character and a mutual desire for growth and virtue. They endure changing circumstances and transcend immediate practical utility. Reflect on your current relationships. Which ones exist primarily for convenience or benefit, and which ones would persist even if there were no practical advantage? Without judging functional relationships, which have their rightful place, seek to nurture and deepen those based on genuine admiration and mutual growth. These are the ones that will sustain your spirit in difficult times. 12. Practice voluntary simplicity. It is in insecurity that we find the only true security, wrote the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. While it may seem paradoxical, there is a profound truth here that the Stoics understood: the more we simplify our external lives, the more space we create for inner richness. Voluntary simplicity does not mean extreme asceticism, but a conscious reduction of the unnecessary complexity that often burdens our lives. It is recognizing that each possession also possesses us in some way, requiring time, attention, and energy to maintain. Start by simplifying a specific area, perhaps your wardrobe, social calendar, digital consumption, or workspace. Notice how reducing external complexity creates mental clarity and inner freedom. The Stoics practiced regular periods of voluntary abstinence from comforts as an exercise in self-discovery and freedom. Try temporarily giving up something you consider essential. You may find that many of your needs are actually preferences. 13. Find contentment in the present moment. People seek retreats in the mountains, in the countryside, by the seaside. But this is a poor retreat, for you can at any time withdraw into yourself. This observation by Marcus Aurelius highlights an essential Stoic practice: the ability to find peace in the present moment, regardless of the circumstances. The human mind has a natural tendency to wander, whether reliving the past or anticipating the future. The Stoics understood that this habit robs us of the only thing we truly possess: the present moment. Anxiety thrives on worrying about the future and regretting the past. Develop the habit of regularly bringing yourself back to the present. When you notice your mind wandering, gently bring your attention back to your immediate experience, your physical sensations, your breath, your surroundings. Practice doing everyday tasks mindfully, experiencing them fully rather than doing them on autopilot while your mind is elsewhere. 14. Use adversity as an opportunity to exercise virtue. Adversity reveals character, it does not build it, wrote one modern author, paraphrasing the Stoics. In fact, the Stoics had an even deeper insight. Adversity not only reveals character, it is the very stuff of character. Without obstacles, how would we develop patience, courage, or resilience? This perspective completely transforms your relationship with difficulties. A challenging relationship is not just a problem to be solved or avoided, but a training ground for developing understanding and patience. A professional crisis is not just a setback, but an opportunity to demonstrate integrity and creativity. When you face your next challenge, big or small, ask yourself, what virtue does this situation invite me to practice? What quality of character can I develop through this experience? This shift in perspective does not eliminate the difficulty, but it transforms its meaning, giving purpose even to suffering. 15. Take a bird's-eye view, see problems from a cosmic perspective. Think of the vastness of time, comprehend the history of mankind, consider the infinity before and after, notice how your present concern compares to the whole. This practice, often described by Marcus Aurelius, is a powerful antidote to the catastrophic thinking that often accompanies anxiety. When something deeply troubles us, we often lose perspective, seeing the problem as if it occupied our entire horizon. The Stoic view from above invites us to imagine our problem from an ever-widening perspective, as it would be seen from the perspective of our entire city, our country, our planet, the stars. Practice this mental exercise when you feel overwhelmed. Imagine yourself floating above your current situation, viewing it from ever-increasing heights until it becomes just a tiny dot in a vast panorama. This is not a technique of invalidation, your challenges matter, but of contextualization that often reveals that even serious problems are not as absolute as they seem at the moment. 16. Accept the impermanence of all things. Everything is in constant flux, Marcus Aurelius observed. The Stoics deeply understood the transitory nature of all human experience, relationships, possessions, status, health, even life itself. This understanding led them not to despair but to a deeper appreciation of the present and a healthy detachment. Resisting this basic truth of existence, that everything changes and eventually passes away, is a source of immense suffering. When we desperately cling to what will inevitably change, we create unnecessary tension. When we accept impermanence, we paradoxically become more able to fully appreciate what we have while it lasts. Practice contemplating the transitory nature of something you deeply value, not with fear or sadness, but with genuine gratitude that you can experience it in this moment. How would you live differently if you truly integrated the truth that nothing is guaranteed beyond this moment? 17. Practice self-discipline as a path to freedom. He who cannot govern himself will be governed by others, Seneca warned. The Stoics understood a paradox that many of us still struggle with. True freedom comes not from unrestrained indulgence but from conscious self-discipline. This truth operates on all levels. On the physical plane, succumbing to every impulse for convenience, comfort, or immediate pleasure often leads to consequences that limit our future freedom. On the mental plane, allowing negative thoughts and reactive emotions to dominate our consciousness is a form of inner bondage. Develop a practice of small, regular acts of self-discipline, not as punishment, but as an exercise in freedom. It could be something as simple as waking up the first time your alarm goes off, completing a challenging task before checking social media, or staying calm when provoked. Each act of self-governance strengthens your capacity for conscious choice rather than automatic reactivity. 18. Examine your judgments before forming opinions. It is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters, Epictetus taught. The Stoics recognize that our emotional responses are preceded by judgments that are often unconscious and automatic. These judgments, not the events themselves, determine our emotional experience. Develop the habit of pausing before forming definitive opinions, especially in emotionally charged situations. Ask yourself, am I seeing the whole situation or just a fragment? What information might I be missing? Are there alternative interpretations of what I'm observing? This practice of suspending judgment, what the Stoics called epice, is not about permanently avoiding forming opinions, but about ensuring that when we do, they arise from careful consideration rather than impulsive reactions. This space between event and judgment is where wisdom resides. 19. Cultivate healthy apathy, absence of emotional disturbance. Stoic apathy has been deeply misunderstood in modern culture. For the Stoics, it did not mean indifference or lack of feeling, but a state of inner tranquility free from excessive emotional disturbance, something closer to the equanimity that many spiritual traditions value. This healthy apathy does not reject positive emotions such as joy, love, and enthusiasm. Instead, it seeks to free ourselves from the destructive passions, impulsive anger, paralyzing fear, corrosive envy, that impair our judgment and well-being. Practice observing intense emotions without being overwhelmed by them. When a strong emotion arises, rather than suppressing it or letting it drag you down, acknowledge its presence. I notice anger rising. Notice the associated physical sensations without judgment. With practice, you will develop the ability to feel fully without being controlled by transient emotional states. As we develop these skills in our social relationships, we naturally come to grips with deeper questions of purpose and meaning. The Stoics understood that a virtuous life could not be developed in a vacuum. It had to manifest itself in how we find meaning and direction in our journey. Let's now explore how Stoicism helps us find true purpose in an often confusing and disorienting world. 20. Focus on the process, not the results. Do the best you can, and leave the rest to fate, Epictetus advised. This Stoic lesson unlocks a revolutionary shift in perspective, shifting your emotional investment from the outcome, which is not entirely within your control, to the quality of your actions, which is. Obsession with specific outcomes is a constant source of anxiety. When we tie our peace of mind to achieving certain milestones, a promotion, a relationship, recognition, we become prisoners of external circumstances. The Stoics proposed a radically different approach: focus on executing actions with excellence, regardless of the outcome. Practice defining success not by the results achieved, but by the quality of the effort and intention invested. Before a major project or challenge, ask yourself, regardless of the outcome, what would it look like to give my best effort here? What would it look like to act with virtue and excellence in this process? This shift in perspective doesn't diminish your results, it often improves them, but it frees your peace of mind from the tyranny of specific outcomes. 21. Live as if each day were your last. Do not live as if you were going to live forever. Death looms over you. While you can, while you exist, become good, wrote Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics regularly practiced memento mori, the contemplation of mortality, not as a morbid exercise but as a powerful tool for clarifying priorities and heightening appreciation for life. When we forget our finitude, we easily waste precious days on trivialities, postpone important dreams for later, and leave crucial words unsaid. The awareness of death as a reality that is not distant but present illuminates what really matters. Try this Stoic exercise. When you wake up, take a moment to consider, what if this were my last day? Not to induce panic, but to guide your choices. How would you treat the people around you? What would be essential to express or accomplish? How would you distribute your limited energy? Practice living each day not with the fear of death, but with the clarity it provides. 22. Accept constructive criticism as an opportunity for growth. If someone can show me that I am thinking or acting incorrectly, I will gladly change, said Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics recognize that our pride and ego often blind us to our own flaws and limit our growth. Accepting constructive feedback, even when it hurts, is essential to continued development. Our natural tendency is to resist criticism, interpreting it as an attack on our identity. The Stoics proposed an alternative perspective, separating your sense of worth from the specific actions being criticized. You are not your performance, behavior, or mistakes, you are the conscious being capable of observing, learning, and improving. Develop a practice of receiving feedback with curiosity rather than defensiveness. When you feel natural resistance rising, take a deep breath and ask, what can I learn from this, regardless of how it was delivered? Remember that even poorly worded or partially incorrect criticism often contains some valuable truth. 23. Practice mental minimalism, reduce unnecessary thoughts. Most of our thoughts are superfluous. Get rid of them and you will feel relief, observed Marcus Aurelius. Just as we accumulate unnecessary physical objects, we also accumulate thought patterns that consume mental energy without providing any corresponding benefit. The Stoics valued mental economy, the ability to distinguish between useful and useless thoughts, consciously directing attention to the former. Ruminations about the unchangeable past, worries about hypothetical futures, envious comparisons with others, old resentments, all are forms of mental pollution that drain our vital energy. Start by practicing identifying unproductive thoughts. When you notice your mind busy with repetitive worrying or ruminating, ask yourself, is this thought serving me in some way? Is it helping me grow or solve a real problem? If not, practice gently directing your attention to something more constructive, like the present moment, an action you can take, or a calming thought. 24. Develop self-knowledge through daily reflection. Each night before you go to sleep, review your day, Seneca advised. The Stoics practiced regular self-examination, systematically reviewing their thoughts and actions to identify areas for growth and celebrate progress. This practice of regular introspection, without self-flagellation, is essential for ongoing development. In our culture of constant distraction, creating space for genuine self-reflection has become increasingly rare and valuable. Without this space, we tend to repeat the same patterns, with the same results, never truly understanding the roots of our behaviors. Establish a simple daily reflection ritual. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where could I have done better? What patterns am I noticing in my thoughts and behaviors? Maintain a tone of gentle curiosity, like a scientist observing data, not a judge passing judgment. This regular practice of self-awareness will greatly accelerate your personal growth. 25. Avoid judging others without understanding their circumstances. When someone angers or offends you, remember that they do so because they believe it is right, suggested Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics practiced a profound form of cognitive empathy, the ability to understand, even without necessarily agreeing with, the perspectives and motivations of others. When we make snap judgments, we often project our own assumptions onto someone else's motivations. We rarely have full access to the context, history, influences, and pressures that shape another person's behavior. Practice pausing before drawing conclusions about others' actions. Ask yourself, what story am I telling about this person's motivations? What information might I be missing? If I were in their exact circumstances, with their life history and current state of mind, how might I act? This practice does not excuse harmful behavior, but creates space for genuine understanding before judgment. 26. Cultivate emotional resilience through daily practice. Just as a muscle is strengthened by regular exercise, so character is strengthened by challenges, Epictetus taught. The Stoics understood that emotional resilience is not an innate, fixed trait, but a capacity that can be developed through deliberate practice, starting with smaller challenges. This insight is profoundly liberating. Rather than avoiding all discomfort, the Stoics deliberately faced small, voluntary adversities to strengthen their ability to deal with inevitable difficulties. It is preventative training for the soul. Incorporate emotional strengthening exercises into your routine. This could include taking occasional cold showers, practicing intermittent fasting, or doing challenging tasks first thing in the morning. Start with manageable challenges and gradually increase the difficulty. The goal is not to cause unnecessary suffering, but to develop confidence in your ability to cope with discomfort without being overwhelmed by it. 27. Find purpose in serving others. Human beings are made for each other. Teach them or endure them, advised Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics understood our fundamentally social and interdependent nature. Serving others was seen not as a noble sacrifice but as a natural expression of our shared humanity. In an age of extreme individualism, this perspective offers a powerful antidote to the modern epidemic of loneliness and purposelessness. When we genuinely connect with the greater good, we transcend the limitations of exclusive concern for our own comfort and satisfaction. Look for ways to align your daily activities with genuine service. Regardless of your profession or circumstances, ask yourself, How does my work or presence contribute to the well-being of others? You don't have to radically change careers or become an extreme altruist. Small adjustments in intention and attention can transform mundane tasks into acts of purpose. A doctor doesn't just treat illness but alleviates suffering. A driver doesn't just transport people but facilitates human connections. A storekeeper doesn't just sell products but facilitates daily necessities. 28. Practice self-control as a form of freedom. He who is a slave to himself has the worst form of slavery, Seneca observed. The Stoics understood a paradox that our contemporary culture often ignores. True freedom consists not in satisfying every impulse, but in consciously choosing which impulses to follow and which to transcend. When we are controlled by momentary desires, compulsions, or automatic emotional reactions, we experience a subtle but real form of inner imprisonment. Stoic self-control is not about rigid repression, but about creating space for choices that align with our deepest values. Identify an area where impulses often overwhelm your ability to choose. It could be social media use, emotional eating, procrastination, or disproportionate emotional reactions. Practice introducing a brief moment of pause before acting on the impulse. This small space may seem insignificant, but it contains the seed of true freedom, the ability to respond consciously instead of reacting automatically. 29. Accept pain as a teacher, not an enemy. Do not seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and your life will go well, advised Epictetus. The Stoics understood a paradoxical truth: our resistance to inevitable pain often magnifies our suffering. When we struggle against unchangeable realities, we create a second layer of anguish. We suffer because we are suffering. This perspective does not idealize or glorify suffering, but recognizes its inevitable role in the human experience and its potential as a catalyst for growth. Pain, when accepted and processed consciously, can reveal insights that comfort never could. When you face unavoidable pain, physical, emotional, or existential, try shifting your inner stance. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try, "What can this teach me? How can I grow from this experience?" This small shift in perspective doesn't eliminate the pain, but it does transform its meaning and its impact on your life. 30. Develop a healthy indifference to the opinions of others. I want to avoid not only saying anything destructive, but also thinking anything destructive about another person. What about caring what others think of me? Pondered Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics practiced what we might call selective indifference, the ability to value opinions based on their intrinsic merit, not their impact on our ego. Our constant preoccupation with external judgment creates an invisible prison. Living for the approval of others means giving up your inner authority and authenticity. At the same time, completely ignoring all external feedback can lead to arrogance and stagnation. Practice distinguishing between valuable feedback and mere opinions. Ask yourself, does this perspective contain useful information for my growth, regardless of how it makes my ego feel? If so, consider it carefully. If not, practice letting it pass without emotional reactivity. Remember that other people's opinions often reveal more about them than they do about you. As we develop clarity about our purpose and learn to find meaning even in challenging circumstances, we naturally begin to cultivate greater inner balance. The Stoics understood that this balance is not a permanent state that we achieve once, but an ongoing practice that requires constant attention. Let's explore how Stoicism helps us develop this inner stability that remains steadfast even when everything around us seems unstable. 31. Cultivate equanimity in the face of praise and criticism. Remember, it's not who praises or criticizes that matters. It's who you are, wrote Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics practiced a remarkable form of emotional balance, responding with equal calm to both praise and criticism, recognizing both as external events that do not define your intrinsic worth. This equanimity doesn't come naturally. We have a psychological tendency to absorb criticism as absolute truth while dismissing praise as mere kindness, or, conversely, to swell with praise while rejecting criticism altogether. Both reactions reveal an overdependence on external validation. Practice observing your emotional response to both praise and criticism. Notice how both can unsettle your inner balance if your sense of worth is tied to them. work on developing an inner consistency that acknowledges external feedback without being defined by it, like a captain who listens to weather reports without being swept away by the storm. 32. Practice virtue even when no one is watching. Character is what you are in the dark, as modern philosopher John Wooden would say, echoing a deeply Stoic principle. For the Stoics, the true test of virtue lies not in public actions that receive recognition, but in the choices made when no one is watching. This is one of the most challenging lessons of Stoicism, because it directly confronts our tendency to conform our behaviors to social expectations. Would you be just as honest without the possibility of being discovered? Just as generous without recognition? Just as diligent without supervision? Look for opportunities to practice secret virtues, positive acts that deliberately remain unknown to others. This could be quietly correcting a mistake that no one else would notice, anonymously helping someone in need, or simply maintaining your commitment to healthy practices even when no one is watching. These practices strengthen your inner integrity in ways that overt actions rarely do. 33. Accept your mortality as motivation to live well. You could leave this life at any moment. Keep this in mind in everything you do, say, or think, advised Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics regularly practiced contemplation of death not as a macabre exercise but as a powerful tool for clarifying priorities and heightening appreciation for life. Our modern culture often denies, hides, or romanticizes death, creating a dysfunctional relationship with our own finitude. The Stoics proposed the opposite, fully integrating the awareness of mortality into our lives as a source of clarity, purpose, and even tranquility. Practice the Stoic meditation on death occasionally. Take a few minutes to peacefully contemplate, if I knew my time was significantly limited, what would I simplify in my life? What relationships would I prioritize? What conversations would I stop putting off? What minor irritations would I let go of? Use this clarity not to induce anxiety, but to realign your choices with what truly matters. 34. Develop the ability to be alone in peace. One is never so alone as when one is with oneself, Seneca observed, identifying our tendency to avoid our own company. The Stoics deeply valued the ability to be genuinely present and comfortable in solitude, not as a rejection of social connection, but as a foundation for more authentic relationships. In an age of constant connectivity and endless stimuli, the ability to be truly alone has become both rarer and more valuable. Many of us fill every available moment with distractions to avoid confronting our own thoughts, feelings, and core issues. Start by cultivating small, regular periods of genuine solitude, times without your phone, media, books, or outside distractions. Notice the initial discomfort that may arise, and resist the urge to fill it immediately. With practice, you'll discover that this seemingly empty space holds inner resources that no external connection can provide. 35. Cultivate moderation in all aspects of life. In everything, the middle way is best. Even in virtue, excess becomes vice, Seneca taught. The Stoics valued sophrosyne, temperance or moderation, not as puritanical restraint but as practical wisdom that recognizes that virtues taken to extremes often become their opposites. This principle applies not only to physical pleasures, but to virtually every aspect of life. Work without adequate rest becomes counterproductive, self-discipline without flexibility becomes rigidity, confidence without humility becomes arrogance, care for others without self-care leads to burnout. Examine your life for areas where you may be leaning toward extremes. Ask yourself, where am I living out of balance? What virtues am I taking to excess that may be becoming counterproductive? Remember that moderation does not mean mediocrity or a constant middle ground, but a dynamic balance that adjusts to specific circumstances. 36. Practice patience as a fundamental virtue. No great thing comes into being suddenly, Epictetus reminded us. The Stoics understood patience not as resigned passivity, but as an active acceptance of the time required for natural processes of growth and transformation, both external and internal. Our age of instant gratification has made patience a particularly challenging and valuable virtue. When we expect immediate results, in relationships, personal development, creative projects, or professional endeavors, we often sabotage the very processes that would lead to success. Identify areas in your life where impatience may be causing unnecessary suffering or rash decisions. Remember that in both nature and human development, significant processes can rarely be rushed without consequences. Practice recognizing and accepting the natural rhythms of growth, understanding that some seeds take longer to germinate but are no less valuable for that. 37. Accept people as they are, not as you wish them to be. When you wish someone to be other than they are, you are wasting your time. Each person is exactly as he should be at this moment, Epictetus mused. The Stoics recognized a constant source of pain in relationships, our tendency to project idealized expectations onto others rather than accepting their real nature. This acceptance does not mean approval of harmful behaviors or abandonment of the possibility of positive influence. It means recognizing the fundamental reality of each person's autonomy and the limits of our control over their choices, personality, and development. Practice identifying where your frustrations with others stem from unrealistic expectations. Ask yourself, am I responding to the real person in front of me, or to the person I wish they were? Try temporarily suspending your expectations and really seeing the person as they are, with their real strengths and weaknesses. This acceptance creates space for more authentic, less confrontational relationships. 38. Cultivate detachment from material possessions. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants, Epictetus observed. The Stoics practiced a conscious relationship with material goods, recognizing both their usefulness and the danger of excessive emotional dependence on them. This principle does not call for extreme asceticism or the rejection of basic comforts. Instead, it invites us to develop a healthier relationship with possessions, appreciating them while they serve, but remaining aware that they are temporary tools, not extensions of our identity or reliable sources of lasting happiness. Try practicing preemptive detachment occasionally. Imagine losing something you value materially and notice your emotional response. If the thought causes intense anxiety, it may indicate excessive attachment. Also, regularly practice donating or discarding items that no longer serve a clear purpose in your life, noting any emotional resistance that arises during the process. 39. Develop the ability to forgive yourself and others. The best way to take revenge is not to become like the wrongdoer, advised Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics understood that resentment and excessive self-criticism are forms of self-imprisonment that primarily harm the bearer, not their original targets. Stoic forgiveness is not a passive concession or denial of responsibility. It is a pragmatic recognition that mistakes are inevitable in the human experience and that holding on to resentments, against oneself or others, only prolongs suffering without promoting constructive growth. Practice identifying areas where resentment or excessive self-criticism keeps you stuck in past events. Ask yourself, how is this fixation serving my current growth? What freedom would I experience by releasing this emotional burden? Remember that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconnecting with the person who hurt you or denying natural consequences, but rather releasing the emotional burden that keeps you tied to the past. 40. Practice rational empathy, not emotional contagion. It is easy to absorb the emotions of others, but difficult to remain centered while truly understanding their suffering, reflected a modern commentator on Stoic principles. The Stoics distinguished between genuine empathy, the ability to genuinely understand another's experience, and simple emotional contagion where we lose our own stability. This distinction is particularly relevant for empaths and caregivers. Being helpful to someone in distress requires compassionate presence and clear understanding, not necessarily feeling the same intensity of their pain. In fact, maintaining some emotional balance often makes us better able to offer effective help. Develop the ability to be fully present with someone in distress without losing your own center. Practice deep, attentive listening while simultaneously maintaining awareness of your own emotional boundaries. Remember that true empathy does not require exhaustion. It is possible to be deeply compassionate while maintaining intact emotional reserves. As we cultivate inner balance through these practices, we create the foundation needed to apply Stoic wisdom to real-life situations. The Stoics were not interested in philosophical abstractions, but in principles that could be lived and applied in our daily lives. let's now explore how to translate this philosophy into practical action in our daily lives. 41. Accept failures as lessons, not as definitions. Failure is not falling, but refusing to get up, said Epictetus. The Stoics understood that failures are inevitable events in any meaningful journey, not commentary on your worth as a person or your future potential. This distinction is crucial to developing authentic resilience. When we interpret failures as defining our identity, I am a failure, rather than as instructive experiences, this particular approach didn't work. We create unnecessary and lasting limitations. Practice reframing narratives about your own failures. When you face a setback, consciously separate the experience from your identity. Ask, what can I learn from this outcome? How can this experience, while challenging, better equip me to try again more effectively? Remember that virtually every significant endeavor in human history involved multiple attempts and adjustments before success. 42. Cultivate strength of character regardless of circumstances. A good man cannot be unhappy, nor a bad man happy, Seneca asserted, articulating the Stoic conviction that our character, not external circumstances, determines our true condition. This principle does not suggest ignoring material realities or denying that certain circumstances are genuinely more challenging than others. Rather, it recognizes that people of strong character can maintain integrity, purpose, and even tranquility even under adverse conditions, while those with weak character remain dissatisfied even in ideal circumstances. Develop your inner grounding by consciously observing how you respond to changing circumstances. When external situations change, positively or negatively, notice how your reactions reveal your inner anchors. Ask, what remains consistent within me regardless of the circumstances? What values and qualities can I maintain even when everything else is in flux? This practice progressively develops an inner core that remains stable even in turbulent times. 43. Practice radical honesty with yourself. It is difficult to make someone understand something when their salary depends on their not understanding it, observed Upton Sinclair, capturing a principle the Stoics understood deeply, our nearly infinite capacity for self-deception when confronted with uncomfortable truths. The Stoics practiced rigorous self-examination, recognizing that our own rationalizations and justifications often represent the greatest obstacle to genuine growth. This inner honesty is not unproductive self-condemnation, but courageous clarity that enables authentic change. Try to identify an area of your life where you may be avoiding an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps it's a relationship you know is unhealthy, a habit that contradicts your stated values, or a necessary decision that you keep putting off. Practice confronting this reality without excessive judgment, but with a determination to see the situation as it really is, not as you would prefer it to be. 44. Accept that virtue is the only true good. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of them, Epictetus noted, articulating the Stoic perspective that genuine value resides in the quality of our character, not in external circumstances or possessions. This radically different view of good offers a profound liberation from the emotional roller coaster of seeking validation through external achievement, social recognition, or material accumulation, none of which offer lasting satisfaction or genuine stability. Reflect on how you implicitly define success in different areas of your life. Ask yourself, if you removed all external recognition and material rewards, what would I still consider worthwhile to do or be? Gradually realign your priorities to value character traits, integrity, courage, wisdom, fairness, above external markers of success. 45. Develop the ability to define your value internally. Do not seek to have things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and your life will flow without disturbance, advised Epictetus. One of the greatest freedoms the Stoics offered was independence from external validation, the ability to determine one's own worth based on consistent internal principles. In a culture obsessed with external metrics of success, social media likes, professional status, physical appearance, material possessions, this capacity for internal self-worth becomes simultaneously more challenging and more vital to mental well-being. Practice recognizing situations where you seek excessive external approval. Notice times when the opinions of others weigh disproportionately on your decisions or significantly affect your emotional state. Gradually develop the habit of internal checking, asking, does this align with my core values, before asking, how will this be perceived by others? 46. Cultivate the courage to follow your principles. First tell yourself what you want to be, then do what you must do, advised Epictetus. The Stoics deeply valued moral courage, the ability to act on principle even when it is inconvenient, unpopular, or risky. This form of courage is often more challenging than physical bravery. It is relatively rare that we face immediate physical danger, but every day we face situations that test our integrity, small opportunities to compromise values for convenience, social acceptance, or material gain. Start cultivating this courage in smaller decisions where the risk is limited. Practice expressing honest opinions, with appropriate tact, when it would be easier to silently agree. Stand up for someone being treated unfairly when others remain passive. By developing this moral muscle in smaller situations, you build the capacity for greater integrity in truly challenging moments. 47. Practice justice in all your dealings. Justice is the constant and perpetual will to give to each person what is due to him, defined the Roman Stoic philosopher Ulpian. For the Stoics, justice was not a theoretical abstraction but a practical virtue manifested in every interaction, the ability to legitimately consider the needs and rights of others alongside one's own. This practice of everyday fairness expresses itself in small decisions, dividing tasks equitably, giving appropriate credit for contributions, considering the impact of one's choices on others, and resisting the temptation to take unfair advantage even when possible without apparent consequences. Develop a greater sensitivity to fairness by noticing where you may be unconsciously benefiting from imbalances. Ask yourself, am I genuinely considering the impact of my actions on others, or am I prioritizing my own convenience exclusively? This expanded awareness does not paralyze me with guilt, but guides me toward more balanced choices and mutually beneficial relationships. 48. Accept full responsibility for your choices. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength, wrote Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics practiced what we might call radical responsibility, the willingness to accept complete ownership over one's choices and reactions, regardless of the circumstances. This perspective avoids both victim mentality and denial of real circumstances. It fully acknowledges challenging external factors while maintaining unwavering focus on what remains within your control, your interpretations, decisions, and actions. Practice the language of responsibility, both internally and externally. Replace phrases like I had to or I had no choice with I chose or I decided, even when the choice was between equally challenging options. This subtle but profound shift moves you from a passive position to an active agent in your own life, even in circumstances you didn't initially choose. 49. Cultivate practical wisdom, phronesis, in daily decisions. Wisdom consists in doing the right thing, at the right time, in the right way. Epictetus reflected on the virtue the Stoics called phronesis, the ability to apply general principles to specific situations with appropriate discernment. This practical wisdom transcends rigid rules or simplistic formulas. It recognizes that principles must be applied with sensitivity to the unique context of each situation, a balance between consistency and adaptability that defines true maturity. Develop this ability through deliberate reflection after decisions. Ask yourself, did I apply my principles appropriately in this particular situation? Did I find a balance between potentially conflicting values? Gradually, this conscious process develops intuition that can respond wisely even in complex and ambiguous situations. 50. Understand that tranquility comes from within, not from external circumstances. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, observed Marcus Aurelius, articulating the crowning principle of Stoicism, that genuine inner peace derives not from ideal circumstances but from a well-ordered mind and a well-aligned with nature. This truth, when fully integrated, represents the practical synthesis of all the previous lessons. Each Stoic principle, in essence, develops the capacity to maintain inner balance regardless of external conditions, the Stoic definition of true freedom. Start by practicing regular inner check-ins, short breaks throughout the day to observe your mental and emotional state. Notice when your inner peace diminishes, and identify what thoughts or interpretations may be causing you distress. With continued practice, you will develop the ability to recognize and adjust mental patterns that compromise your peace, gradually cultivating a mind that remains stable even in challenging circumstances. This final lesson represents not a conclusion, but the real beginning of a lifelong Stoic practice. The inner tranquility that the Stoics cultivated was not a passive state, but an active condition sustained through constant attention and diligent application of the principles we have explored together. When we genuinely internalize that well-being is not fundamentally dependent on external circumstances but on internal perspective, we unlock a form of freedom that no one can grant or take away. This is the transformative promise of Stoicism, not that life's challenges and pains will disappear, but that we will develop the capacity to face them with dignity, purpose, and even serenity. We have reached the end of this journey through 50 Stoic lessons that truly have the power to transform your life. As we have seen, Stoicism is not a philosophy of passive resignation, but a dynamic system of mental tools that promotes effective action, emotional resilience, and inner peace even in the most challenging circumstances. To briefly revisit our journey, we begin by exploring the fundamentals of mind control, learning to distinguish between what we can and cannot control, practicing negative visualization to reduce anxiety, and developing the ability to observe our thoughts objectively. These fundamental practices create the foundation for all subsequent growth. We then move on to relationships and social interactions, discovering how to maintain realistic expectations of others, cultivate meaningful friendships based on virtue, and find contentment in the present moment. These lessons radically transform our social experience, reducing unnecessary conflict and deepening genuine connections. In the context of purpose and meaning, we learn to focus on process rather than outcomes, embrace criticism as opportunities for growth, and find purpose through service to others. These perspectives help us navigate an often confusing and disorienting world with clarity and inner direction. We explore the cultivation of inner balance through practices such as equanimity in the face of praise and criticism, acceptance of mortality as motivation for living well, and developing the capacity to forgive ourselves and others. These tools allow us to maintain emotional stability even when faced with volatile circumstances. Finally, we translate these principles into practical wisdom, accepting failures as lessons rather than definitions, cultivating radical honesty with ourselves, and understanding that true peace of mind comes from within, not from external circumstances. If you like these teachings, subscribe to our channel and strengthen our support network. This way, we will be able to bring you more and more videos with rich teachings that transform people's lives. Hugs and see you next time.